Annika, so the president had very good things to say about our economy. Does the finance minister agree, though?
You know, the finance minister is an incredibly elusive man here in Davos. I've run back and forth across town to find him, and I finally got hold of him and convinced him to talk to us, somewhat reluctantly. He's standing here next to me. Minister, thank you so much for making yourself available. The first question that came up... Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
The first question is, why were you not at the big panel with our president leading the team when you're such an integral part of this Davos delegation?
Well, I had meetings with the chief executive officer of Anglo-American Corporation, Mark Cutifani, but also with the chief executive officer of that company that bought South African breweries. So very important taxpayers and also very important employers in our society. So something had to give. And,
fair enough.
I thought it was very important that I met with those two chief executive officers.
You've been coming to Davos for a very long time. Has there been a change in the approach from the international community this year, from, say, let's say, 2016?
Well, I've been coming to Davos since 1991, on and off. I have a badge, actually, which recognizes me, amongst others, of course, as those who have been friends of Davos for many years. Yes, I came here to visit with President Nelson Mandela in 1992, and we had a wonderful time in Davos. Obviously, at that time, we were preparing for South African democracy. There was a lot of interest, and I've been here for several years when President Mbeki was president of the Republic of South Africa, and the other years when President Zuma was.
Let's talk about that.
And this time, I'm here when President Ramaphosa is president. Last year, there was a lot of excitement about South Africa, that South Africa was turning a new chapter after 9 wasted years of the Zuma administration. And now we are here this year to re-emphasize once again that South Africa is on the path of renewal and growth. And I think that is an important message. And from the interactions that I've had here in Davos, I can assure everybody that our message is being well received, not without questioning, not without asking us difficult questions, which we have to answer, but I think the general reception is positive. Maybe not as exciting as it was last year, but most certainly welcoming and still a lot of interest in South Africa.
We heard earlier on that there's been a 440% spike in investment in South Africa. What's the reason for this?
Well, first of all, we must understand that the Zuma years destroyed confidence amongst investors in South Africa. And when you destroy investor confidence, the natural consequence of that is that investment dries up. And so post-2017, confidence has been returning to South Africa. Policy uncertainty is being removed, and greater certainty is coming back home. And therefore, one should expect that with confidence returning, with policy certainty returning, one should begin to see an increase in foreign direct investment, but also an increase in investment by domestic economic agents. That's what you'll expect in a normal economic scenario, and that's what we're seeing happening now, or beginning to happen. We expect really investment to grow much higher. We expect investment as a percentage of GDP to rise from the 19% or so where we are today, at least to around 25 to 30% of GDP in the next 3-4 years. That's what we want to see. That's what creates jobs. That's what makes business going. That's what pays tax. And from that tax, that's where we get the allocation for expenditure for the many causes that are needed to be financed in South Africa.
Can we afford any more bailouts in terms of Eskom and SAA?
I don't know what a bailout is, to be honest.
You don't want to know what a bailout is because you don't want to give any more bailouts.
I don't know what a bailout is, but if you're asking me whether the South African government is committed to the restructuring of state-owned enterprises, and whether in the process of that restructuring there might be a need to inject capital into those enterprises, my answer will be yes, we should be prepared to do that. But for as long as we are not pouring water onto a sieve, hoping that the water will fill up a sieve, so we have to be prepared. For as long as we own these assets, we have to make sure that they're properly managed, that the governance systems work properly, and that we can indeed have the confidence that they will be able to survive. But what I learned personally in the private sector is if a business unit does not work, it makes no point whatsoever to keep it.
We flew on Swiss Air, and that's a story in itself in terms of looking at SAA. But just last question.
I did not say anything about SAA. I talk about assets which are not functioning.
All right. Have you had any talks with Zimbabwe? They're looking for help. They're looking for you to extend a helping hand financially. Have you had any talks with them, and can we afford to give them the help that they need?
On the 21st of December 2018, I held a meeting with the Minister of Finance from Zimbabwe, accompanied by the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance of Zimbabwe. I was accompanied by the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, one Deputy Governor, the Director General in the National Treasury. And that meeting was meant to try and understand from the horse's mouth what the current situation in Zimbabwe was and what is it that was being done in Zimbabwe to make good out of a very difficult situation. So I characterize that meeting as a conversation, a discussion, in order to understand what's going on. And for us, South Africans and Zimbabweans, to see how can we work together to try and confront the challenges which are in Zimbabwe. Very good meeting. Issues were identified, and further work is being done between the respective officials from Zimbabwe and from South Africa about what needs to be done for all of us to face up to the challenges of Zimbabwe. During the course of yesterday here in Davos, I met with the Minister of Finance of Zimbabwe, and we further discussed very productively some of the issues which confront Zimbabwe. There are two critical issues. Firstly, that the political leadership must work as hard as they've always done for the lifting of sanctions against Zimbabwe. Secondly, to confront those challenges technically at the economic and financial level and try and see what to do about that. At the end of the day, the solutions to these challenges confronting Zimbabwe lie with the Zimbabweans. There's no other power outside Zimbabwe that can solve those challenges. The best thing that the international community can do is to lift sanctions against Zimbabwe and allow the Zimbabweans to go about their business in the best way that they can. And the Paris Club, the World Bank, the IMF, and all other creditors have to come to an understanding how to walk along with Zimbabwe and Zimbabweans as they confront and solve their own challenges.
It sounds like you're saying, sorry, we can't help you with a loan.
I think when Zimbabwe confronts challenges, it will be wrong for people technically to talk about loans or bailouts or some such uneducated things. When one confronts big challenges, one needs to have a conversation. One needs to have a discussion, debate issues, exchange ideas. And in the process, you might be able to find solutions to what are indeed very, very challenging circumstances.
Thank you very much, Minister. I would like to pin you down a little bit more on whether we could afford to give Zimbabwe a loan or not, or give them any financial assistance. But it appears as if you're not really in a position to give me that answer. Am I pushing too hard?
Well, you can put as hard as possible, but you're going on a wrong tangent because you're on a wrong wicket. The wicket that you should be on, that you should be betting on, is one that you have two neighbors who are involved in conversations about how to confront the issues of Zimbabwe. It's not about bailouts or loans or some such strange things. It's a conversation we must have. And during the conversation, we might be able to find solutions of one sort or the other. But the final decision makers are the Zimbabweans. It's nobody else who can decide for Zimbabweans. It's a sovereign state. They have their own ways of doing things. We can only have a conversation about what are our experiences, for example. I mean, when we got into government in '94, we found a huge debt burden for South Africa. By 1999, when I became governor of the South African Reserve Bank, South Africa faced a net open foreign currency position of $25 billion. And so we've had to work our way through that process, such that today we have gold and foreign exchange reserves of over $50 billion. So if that experience that we went through can be of any help to the Zimbabweans, fine. Let's have that conversation. Let's learn from each other, and let's see how we can help each other. There's no solution that says, here is $10 here is $50 here. That's not the solution. Solution is confront the challenges, discuss them, exchange experiences, and come to whatever conclusions you might come to. We haven't come to any conclusion.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that and unpacking it for us. It's something that's been discussed hotly in South Africa. And I think what the Minister is saying is that he would like to see a comprehensive and holistic approach to issues in Zimbabwe rather than just handing them a loan or any sort of financial assistance. There's a bigger picture involved and South Africa is willing to assist. Back to you in the studio.